Ready to start?
No, I mean, can we come back in like 25 years when I can have facial hair?
No. So, welcome to Powerbomb Weekly, the only weekly internet show that comes from my basement, where we talk about everything wrestling all the time, every time.
Yeah, I'm nice. It's nice to know that you don't cheat on me with other shows in the basement, you know.
All right, so this weekend, happy Valentine's today to everybody who celebrated that glorious holiday. And
Yes.
for those of us, for those that are locally, you know that the snow has finally melted. People can finally get out of their driveways, and life has returned to normal.
That's how our weekend went. It was super fun because we were all hoping that Friday the snow would happen and shut everything down so nobody had to go to work. The snow decided, I'm going to snow
Saturday,
Friday night and dump all through Saturday and then all through Sunday, and then I'm going to go away Monday on your holiday, which was super cool. So that was a fun weekend for everybody. And unfortunately, our weekend seemed to be pretty light because apparently the rest of the country is just fucked.
Yes, I love the Facebook meme going around right now saying that most of my friends in the Midwest want their free trial of Alaska weather to end.
Yes, to all the friends and family that are in Houston, Texas, hang in there, guys. I know it sucks. There are people right now that are sleeping in their cars because it's just too cold to be in their house right now because of the power. And they're doing those rolling blackouts of people getting like 20 minutes of power, 20 minutes of power.
Must suck if the first time you ever had a little bit of snow in your life.
I mean, I tried to explain it to somebody at the store. They're like, I don't understand why this is happening. I was like, you gotta understand, it's Texas. It doesn't snow.
Right.
Like if they get this much snow on the ground, it's like a fucking state emergency. So yeah, please be safe out there, guys.
All right. So now our official welcome to Powerbomb Weekly. You've heard all the fun stuff. Now, welcome to Powerbomb Weekly. We are going to start the show. We have an entrance. We actually have a couple entrances for the next couple shows. So let's take it away, announcer guy.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Powerbomb Weekly. Tonight, in honor of Valentine's Day, it's all about that violence. Now, here's your hosts. The man who put the stun in Stunner, Michael Burdett. And his co-host, the man who put the booty in Bootios. That's a lot of booty, folks. Joey Marcello.
Welcome to Powerbomb Weekly.
Hello, everyone. Yes, very excited to be here. And there's a lot of crap that happened this week, and we're going to try and nail through all of it. And we have a wonderful topic to get through that is near and dear to my heart that I did absolutely no research on, so we're going to fire this from the cuff. We're going to talk about a good bit of the old ultra-violence, man.
So is this where we're talking about like Ric Flair bleeding all over the place?
I was actually going to start off with that of, the Muda scale. Do you know what the Muda scale is?
No, I've heard it, but I don't know what it is.
Okay, so essentially what happened in that is somewhere around 1993, if I remember correctly. I have my date. I'm going to pull it up real quick. It was 1992. It was the Great Muda. He fought Hiroshi Heis. I apologize if I am butchering this name. I should know these people by now. Muda performed what is one of the most intense blade jobs you've ever seen. It's the one where he's literally just the Crimson Mask.
Right.
It is the Crimson Mask at this point.
Gotcha.
And so the wrestling industry kind of termed this the Muda scale of, if a guy blades and bleeds all over the place, where does it land on the Muda scale? How brutal is that blade job? So I figured I'd start off with this question of, what is the most brutal blade job that you've ever seen?
Ric Flair.
Ric Flair, huh?
Possibly the second biggest one that I can remember in modern history would probably be Austin, where he had the whole Bloodstone t-shirt.
The Bloodstone t-shirt was awesome with Hart, was really good where they did the reverse. For me, truthfully, I think the nastiest blade job, I honestly think it tops the Muda scale, is the one that Eddie Guerrero did, where he fought, I want to say it's JBL. Take a shot. I'm going to try and cut that out because I noticed when I said I wasn't going to do the ums and I kept doing them. So I apologize, everyone. But that one was just insane because what happened is I take a shot. If you've seen the chair shot, he gets cracked with it, right? And for a lot of people who don't know this, there's a lot of guys will take, Tylenol, right? Tylenol. Don't really, they won't really drink a lot. They'll kind of like get the sweat and everything kind of, ready to force out their body, get the veins cracking and everything. They'll pop a couple of those so that way, you'll bleed pretty heavily because your blood's going to be looser. You're working out and everything. You're thinned out a little bit. And there's veins in the top of your forehead. And a lot of guys, they kind of cut here, across the top. And a lot of times guys can even cut it, glue it, and then have it busted open hard weight in a match so that way they'll bleed. Sid Vicious did that a couple times. But when you cut that top front right here, it's kind of starts to trickle a little bit. Mm-hmm. And the more the guy kind of works it and pops it a little bit, and the sweat starts pouring, you can get a lot out of a very, very little blade job, okay? What happened is that when Eddie cut, he cut across his head, and he cut both of those little vein pieces in the top of his head. And I mean, it's a gusher. It is pouring down his face. It's one of the most brutal blade jobs I think I've ever seen in my life. I think he absolutely crushed it. And I've seen a lot of indie show guys do some really stupid shit that
I was just saying,
talked about.
When you asked about I wasn't counting any of the backyard.
Yeah, we won't count any of the backyard stuff like that because we definitely, I think one of the nastiest things I ever saw was
the video one last year with the guy that broke his leg.
No, that one was pretty bad. But I was going to say the actual hardcore that Grimes did, Nick Gage did, where he got thrown into the light tube racks that they were doing, and he cut the artery underneath his under armpit and was bleeding out all over the place and almost died. That was pretty brutal. But yeah, no, that's probably the nastiest blade job I think I've ever seen, at least on WWF television, is the Eddie Guerrero one. So if you get a chance, please check that out. It is a geyser of blood spraying out of Eddie at that point. So, wrestling has always had blood.
Yeah.
A lot of times we talk about hard ways and things like that. So, for those of you who don't know, the hard way is you would get punched in the eye by a guy. And a lot of times what would happen is when guys would hit, they would hit and twist and scuff off the side right there, which many people might remember Terry Funk did to Mick Foley in the middle of the ring during their last feud.
Mick Foley, my favorite.
Yes, there's a wonderful story that we told.
We're
going to tell.
Yeah, we don't have time tonight.
Oh, that's right. We need to get through this quick.
There's 2 pay-per-views and everything like that.
Tons of stuff. 5 a.m. comes very early. But yeah, he basically goes to hit Mick, and Terry's probably one of the last people in the world, next to maybe like Ric Flair and a couple other people who can do a traditional hard way. Mm-hmm. And Mick basically goes, and Terry hits me, and nothing happens. So Terry hits me, and nothing happens. So Terry keeps hitting me until finally a little trickle of blood comes down. And that's where Mick has that great promo that he talks about in his book, where he talks about the swollen, pussy eye, where he's cutting it with the dark shadows coming out and where the evil's coming out of him. It just set the tone for that character because Terry Funk literally just blacked his eye because he couldn't get his hard way to bust. It was nasty.
The most famous hard way I'm aware of is the Randy Orton, Brock Lesnar. Did he not? Was it real? Was it not? It finally came out. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say.
It finally came out that was in fact planned.
Yes.
There was this whole big thing like online with the internet sheets because some people like to troll Dave Meltzer. It's fun to do.
Yeah.
Where, after the match, Randy was back there pissed and he was trying to fight, Brock Lesnar had to leave early. It was all set up. It was a year later. It finally all came out. It was all planned. It was all part of the thing.
It was all part of the thing. Well, didn't they have to let it in because Jericho got pissed?
Yeah, Jericho
jumped up in front of Brock's face, and Brock was basically telling him, "If you feel froggy, jump." And Jericho's telling him, "I've jumped on better ones than you before." Essentially, so Chris, no matter what we say about you on this upcoming show, that little Canadian bastard is just a spitfire, isn't he?
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, blading. Blood has been around for a long time. Hard way was a good classic way to get to it. The blade job got introduced because it was just easier. It's just easier for people to do. It's easier to control.
Right.
A lot of times guys will mouth it, they'll palm it, they'll tape it into their wrists and nick it and stuff. But really the introduction of what is hardcore, big-time style wrestling would probably have come from Frontier Martial Arts Wrestling. And that was a Japanese promotion that specialized in the garbage style of wrestling,
Hey, real quick, that hot guy that was here last week, he's not here this week. I guess he was scared to come out. He's invited anytime he wants to.
You know what? I will take him versus you and Ian any day of the week. That's right.
There we go.
Kevin, you're going to be on my team.
It's going to be me and Ian, and you and Kevin.
I like
you
this.
You and K-Dog.
Yes, as K-Dog, yes. And I'm going to have you rap when you come to the ring, too. That'll be your gimmick, and you'll probably be better than the kids that are on AEW. So, yeah, Frontier comes along, and Frontier really specializes in these style of matches. But they got out there. This is the C4 matches, the barbed wire rope matches, all of the stuff that they started adding into.
But didn't that all start from Japan, the Japanese death matches?
Yes, that is starting from Japan, the Japanese death matches that they had. Frontier really specialized in this style stuff. This is where Hayabusa comes from, which is one of the most legendary Japanese talents. There's moves named after him that he himself created. Right. Tons of people have it. Unfortunately, he was paralyzed in a match many, many years later where he attempted like a moonsault, landed awkwardly, and actually, he ended up crippling himself and eventually got the use of his legs and things back years later towards the end of his death in the 2000s. But this really was brutal stuff. And now I think a lot of the Japanese stuff started to get really crazy with the C4 tables. Obviously, we know about Foley and Funk with their big, huge match where Mick gets his arm barbecued and stuff with the C4 explosion. They're saying it's C4, but come on, it's really just it's a flash pop.
Right.
But this is really the start of that, and it really gets picked up here for the American audience, obviously with ECW.
Yeah.
And ECW went from. ECW is just such a weird show on its own, and we're trying to kind of highlight a couple of these skips across, but
it started off very, very. The way ECW started off, what I read in the books and stuff like that, is ECW started off like legit. It was a passion project. Much like us, we're a passion project.
But they kept adding more to it.
Right.
And then it just became that ECW matches were just ECW matches. Now, WWE, obviously, they rolled things back, or they made championships only contested under ECW rules, traditional ECW rules. But, the
ECW will come up during Raw tonight.
But
SmackDown. Anyway.
So for ECW, that bleed over into it. And I think the problem that I have with a lot of that is that it kind of started that downtrend of the garbage wrestling, outlaw mud show, as they like to call it for the Cornette fans. But it was just guys who shouldn't be in the ring because they were willing to do stuff.
Right.
Like New Jack. New Jack, I don't want any heat with you. We're cool, bro. But like New Jack's a hell of a talker.
Oh yeah, he was really good.
I couldn't tell you a single great move that he's ever done in a match other than something that led to someone bleeding or almost dying.
Right.
And so I think as people followed along and the explosion of the backyard wrestling happened and the more violence got amped up and things like that. So the more ECW went harder, everybody else started going harder, which meant that the WWF started going harder. And that's where we get Foley thrown off the cage. That's where we get a lot of things like the barbed wire bats brought into it. That's where we get things like fire and implemented. Because we've never seen any of that on
traditional
big scene. Now, I like to call that what we saw in the Attitude Era as a fire sale, which happens in a territory that's dying, which is you just ramp everything up as high as you can possibly go.
Yeah.
So would you say that helped the business, obviously, because the Attitude Era was so successful, but would you say that it hurt it because once you literally throw a man off the top of the cage 20 feet to his floor, you can't ever do that bump again?
It's twofold. It definitely helped. And it could be compared to now. Why is there so much flippy flips? Because that's what it's gotten accustomed to. When you start getting accustomed to something, you're right, it ruins it because you can never go back. It's one of the biggest criticisms that AEW has. Their first match is always like out of the cannon. Consistently out of the cannon first match. Well, you've just set the tone for the entire show. How are you? And when your main event is not as good, but if you've been watching our show for a while, AEW has generally been a sandwich. Great first match, great middle match, great ending match. The middle, the seasonings and the accoutrements are not as great. And yes, when you have I'm not a fan of like we're having this weekend, Extreme Elimination Chamber.
Yeah.
Elimination Chamber should not be its own pay-per-view. TLC should not be its own pay-per-view.
Agreed.
Ladder Money in the Bank should not be its own pay-per-view. These should be special matches. Hell in a Cell absolutely should not be its own pay-per-view.
Well, they've even gone to the point of, and we're a little bit off topic, but they've even gone to the point of It's just the name of the show.
Right.
They might contest
Right.
a TLC. They might contest a ladder match. They might contest
Right.
this. But it's not like the whole pay-per-view card like it used to
Right.
be is blocked out with every match is in.
Right.
You know?
So my point is, yes, it weakens the product because you know they tried to recreate fully going off the cell, and it never will, and it'll never look as good.
No.
You know, how many times during a WrestleMania have I seen Shane McMahon throw himself off a cage? 3 in a row, I
Every
think.
one in the last couple of years, on
Right.
top of everything else that he's done.
So
So is ultra violence diluted because we went so hard, so fast because Vince had to crush WCW somehow? So as we've always talked about and has been mentioned, Vince going R, you know, with the boobies, with the blood, with everything else on top of it,
Yep.
the ridiculousness of it. Did that just crush the fact that, you know, is it good that there's a no blood policy right now in a lot of places because there was just so
Yes.
much blood for so long?
yes, I agree. And when you do see it, it's special again. It's like that one age-old joke that if you go 7 years without sex, you become a virgin again because it's been so long.
Yeah, makes sense.
So, yeah, but at the same time, something that you're expecting to be violent on a regular basis can be good. And I know it's done with, but if you go back and you look at some old tapes, the Lucha Underground show, that was very violent.
Yes, it was.
But it was amazing, and it was produced properly. Vampiro and Matt Stryker
Vampiro did a great job on that
and
program. He really did.
Chavo.
Yeah.
They were all of the technical experts on there, and plus they had a good roster. But you saw stuff on there, and it was cool because it was post-production. There was stuff on there you're like, how is that dude alive? An example is Swerve versus Ricochet.
Yeah.
Their army buddy blow-off.
Oh, yeah, that was...
He went through
We talked about that, yeah.
He went through 2-plate glass sugar
Yeah.
onto the front of a Jeep.
Which sugar glass will still cut you. It will still cut
Oh yeah,
you.
he was lacerated all over the place, but it was still good. And you know what? That was something you were expecting from that show. So when you see something, for me, when you see violence on a WWE show or a WCW show, and unfortunately it should carry over to AEW, but it doesn't. When you see just like extreme violence, your reaction should be like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
Have they lost their minds? Not, oh, yep, Sammy's doing his spot, or Johnny Schmo is getting that blood in.
I agree to that point. I mean, now...
Violence to be against violence should not happen.
I'm going to have a question,
Yeah.
and then I'm going to have a twofold thing here in
Sure.
a second, just so we can kind of... We got a lot to get through, guys, and this is a huge topic that I really want to talk about, but we'll come back to it at some point, okay? So the question I have for you is, with the exposure,
Okay.
is there a warrant to do ultra violence at this point, other than to actually have an ultra violence backyard garbage match, or a promotion built around it, like CZW's death matches,
right.
like a bunch of places like that, like XPW and things like that, that were just centered on death match stuff?
Right.
Because unfortunately, I think the thing with death matches is that for every one RVD and Jerry Lynn or somebody out there who can do that and do extra, there's a lot of just really fat, out-of-shape white guys who can do nothing more than bleed hepatitis all over the place.
You mean like Insane Clown Posse, or...
You know, I don't want to hate too much on the clowns for it, but, you know, the JCW, they're very much known for hardcore style stuff like that. You know,
That was the first exposure I ever had.
Like I used to love a lot of those guys, and this will maybe segue into it. So I'll let you answer the question.
Yeah.
Do you think that it just needs to go away? It just shouldn't exist anymore at
I
this point,
think-
or do you think? And what I mean
Sorry.
by that is, recently we've seen guys like Cesaro get busted.
Yes.
You know, he's still got the stitch on the
Oh,
side
yeah.
of his head, which has been busted open a couple times in the last few weeks. Seeing that blood on him
Eddie, Sammy, and Eddie.
is not a terrible thing, right?
Right.
You know, maybe in a match where there should be blood, like Taker's last match or something
Yeah.
like that, where there should be blood in a match, you know, that should be a great one. But I'm talking about a legitimate barbed wire, rope, glass, you know, light tube style match. Is it because it's just we're watching two guys just beat the fuck out of each other for no reason that it just shouldn't exist anymore?
So, I go back to kind of what I already said. It should be special. It should be something that ends a particular feud.
Yeah.
Like, for example, Sami Callihan. He does violence just for violence, and it's his character.
Well,
and it gets old. And it gets old after a while. It does. It really gets old. And now, when Sami tried to kill Eddie Edwards for real, accidentally.
That's why I'm not his fan.
Accidentally, for real, kill him. And then they had, after Eddie's rehab, they had their big violent match afterwards. Well, that made sense.
Yeah.
But just, let's see, what's the biggest feud going on right now? So, for example...
I mean, realistically, let's say MJF Jericho.
No, let's go even better. Sheamus and McIntyre.
Okay, Sheamus and McIntyre. You're literally talking about a 20-year friendship, destroyed, title belt. They've had brawls in the back. Should they have a brawl that encompasses
death rules,
broken bottles, and
that's not their
stuff
character.
Like that.
That doesn't make sense. And when the only reason that the Roman Reigns KO matches work is because of KO.
Yeah,
Roman Reigns is not a believable death match guy.
No, and I wouldn't even say what we're seeing on that is deathmatch.
No, but I'm saying if that's all they have left to go.
At this point, yeah, that really is. Like I said, unless he fucking blows his brains out with a hand cannon coming up here soon. So, my next go into this is that backyard wrestling blew up.
Yes.
There was promotion. There was video games about backyard wrestling
Yes, I
with
remember.
weed eaters and all this other stuff going on with it. Does it... I guess the question I have for it is and I'll comment this with my statement here in a minute. When that happened and all of these promotions and everything blew up, should the major companies ignore that and squash it, or should they latch onto it to pull that audience?
What they should do is what they did.
Because, I love Frontier. I love watching Frontier stuff. I love watching some of the Japanese stuff and some of these guys who I could just name. I could go into 50 different names and 50 matches about what they did. And I will say, I think they got stupid when they started having, live crocodiles and shit beside the ring and stuff. Because no one was going to get eaten by a crocodile. And they were, this big.
Or you get some dogs and give them...
Yeah, and you let them shit all over the place. No,
they should do what they did. Hey, don't do this at home. These are paid professionals. And just kind of we acknowledge that it's happening, but we're not going to go that route.
Okay. So I'll give you two just to wrap up. One, I like I said, I loved the Japanese style death matches.
Yeah.
I loved the blood. I thought it was awesome. Even when I got to a point of kind of seeing that this was pretty much going downhill, I still loved it. And what took me out of it and has made me not a fan of the deathmatch style stuff anymore, I could go into Zandig getting pinned up by meat hooks and stuff at one point, but there was a guy by the name of Thumbtack Jack. You probably don't know who this is. His picture might be here at some point on a YouTube video. If not, look up Thumbtack Jack. So he was a young kid from Germany, I believe. He got really popular very, very quick with his YouTube videos for doing deathmatch style stuff. He took a bomb off the apron into hypodermic needles, I'm talking brutal shit, right? He was all about doing these big, hardcore, crack, busted all over the place kind of style matches, right? Mm-hmm. Young kid too. He was probably 22 or 23 when what I'm about to talk about is going to happen.
You keep using past tense.
Yes, because what happened, and that's kind of what I want to get to is, so this kid, he's super red hot on the hardcore scene, right?
Right.
And he has a match with Masada, and he takes a power bomb onto a set of cinder blocks, and it breaks his spine from the front.
Ugh.
He broke his back from the front of his back. It broke inside of his body. It didn't break on the back of the body. It broke through here, right? So he had to have his spine put back together. He can't ever take a bump again.
Well, yeah, no.
He's 22 years old, 24 years old at this time. He'll never take a bump in his life again. He can't ever wrestle again. His passion is dead. All because he did garbage wrestling.
Right.
So when I go back and I look at some of these things, and I look at these kids, these 15, 16-year-old kids who were getting put through legit glass sheets and thrown through windows and all this stuff just to get a home video out that they never saw a dime from. That these kids might not be walking properly anymore. They could have facial scarring and stuff like that prevents them from jobs and stuff. I think it just went too far, too fast.
Yeah, I agree.
When I go back and I can look with the age of eyes and say we went too far.
Right.
And the reason I'll cap this off with is my very last match in front of a live crowd was a hardcore match, and it was the classic, old school Ian Rotten Taipei glass wrapped fist death match. And I got a call from a buddy who said, "I need a favor." He had 2 promotions. One was the kid friendly, and then he was trying to start a deathmatch style promotion, trying to get that older audience in, right?
Right.
And I wrestled a fat, out of shape jerk who didn't know how to take a bump, refused to take a bump, and didn't want to get anything in until I pretty much legit hit this man as hard as I could across the face and like busted his nose wide open. And then I basically grabbed him and said, "Are we going to start working now?" And then it kind of went from there. So I ended up with cuts all over my shoulders, my arms, my face is all beat up. I think I got busted lips. I probably got blacked eyes and stuff. I got stuff all down my back. And I got paid about $65 to do that. And from that point on, I decided I would never do that again because I'm just a puss. And also, there's never going to be any money in it unless you're Sabu, unless you're Mick Foley, unless you're RVD who can fall back on something legitimate. I honestly think at this point, just being able to bleed hepatitis all over the front row, it doesn't make you a wrestler. And it took me a long time to learn that.
If you want to see, I've also always thought,
and I've tried to find pictures or videos of it. It doesn't exist because we did this literally in a piece of shit coal mining town up in like close to almost Ohio, and I think there might have been 17 people in the audience.
if you want to watch people legitimately try to hurt each other, watch MMA.
Yeah, and honestly, yeah, I love it. By the way, Kamaru Usman, you're the king of that division. Oh my God, that match was awesome. So that is our take on Ultraviolence. I would love to come back and revisit this when we have a little bit more time to dive really deep into some of those names that I was throwing out and talk about some of those style of matches. And maybe we'll do a set down and watch along where I'll pick a really good, brutal death match.
And you can watch me just cringe. And just watch me cringe.
I'll watch you just eek.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so violence. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not, as long as it makes the story better.
Yeah.
It just needs to make the story better.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to talk about Impact Wrestling real quick.